Good afternoon. I am Andrea Chisholm with the Midday News for this Tuesday, November 5. We do apologize for the late start, but a special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Noxious fumes from the King Street offices of Tax Administration Jamaica in downtown Kingston have resulted in the building being evacuated. The fumes are also reportedly affecting offices on nearby Orange Street, including the Criminal Records Office, which has also been evacuated. The incident has been confirmed by Chairman of the Police Federation, Sergeant Patre Rowe. With dengue cases on the increase, the Nurses Association of Jamaica is calling on the Health Ministry to be consistent with its fogging methods to reduce mosquitoes. TVJ's Shamela Pullen reports.
51 persons have died from dengue-related deaths from 2018 to present. That's according to the Ministry of Health. But President of the Nurses Association of Jamaica, NAJ, Carmen Johnson, believes some of those deaths could have been avoided if the fogging by the Ministry of Health was consistent.
It's a mixture of chemicals that they use to do the fogging. And what persons have recognized over a period of time that the mixture is not consistent across regions. And so I may mix it a certain way, another set may mix it another way. One of the complaints that we have heard is that because you take persons on to do the work without the requisite training, and they themselves have complained too, you find out that that consistency in how you do things isn't there.
Ms. Johnson says over the years, the profile of the Aedes aegypti mosquito has changed and it is now more aggressive.
What we find is that the mosquitoes seem to be more virulent, and as I said, you find that the patients, especially our children, within a day of starting feeling febrile, the temperature goes up to 103, 102, and so they are sicker than they have ever been. Again, we lack the number of bed spaces that we have in any intensive care units. And so some of these patients, when they come down and are very ill, they are not able to get into an intensive care unit to be cared for.
The NAJ president says it's a public health problem in need of urgent attention. She added that the increase in the number of dengue cases is impacting nurses.
It affects our nurses again with the increased patient load having to care for. Some of them themselves are affected, and some of them, their children or grandchildren, are also affected. We have had a nurse in the center here who lost her grandson to dengue. And we have had other nurses whose children have been so affected by dengue. So you now have your family member with severe dengue to care for, while at the same time you have to come out now to ensure that those who come in with it. And so it kind of create that frustration within their mind.
Meanwhile, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton told TVJ News recently that the Ministry of Health will be making changes to how it goes about fogging. Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, the Western Regional Health Authority is calling for an enhanced vector control program on that side of the island. TVJ's Shane Masters picks up that story.
The Health Authority is calling for sustained help in treating dengue cases. Speaking to journalists recently in Montego Bay, St. James, Acting Regional Vector Control Officer Ryan Morris noted that Western parishes have seen a significant reduction in the Aedes aegypti mosquito since July.
We have seen a 7% decrease in our Aedes index in the Western region from as much as 18% down to 11%.
This he attributes to the work of the enhanced vector control teams put in place by the Health Ministry. However, he says there could have been a greater reduction in the mosquito population if there wasn't a halt in the program between May and June.
Every time we have such a program, we make a dent in control of the mosquito. We use the Aedes index as an indicator of our gains, and as such we would have seen that going down. Having had this program January to March, we saw that we had index going down, we had cases going down. The program ended March.
He says even though there has been a reduction in the mosquito population, the number of cases in Western parishes is still troubling. But another source of concern is that the Aedes aegypti mosquito is not the only source of dengue. The Aedes albopictus, or the Asian tiger mosquito, also spreads the virus.
This new vector that we speak of tend to prefer the more vegetative area. So you are not only concerned about the domesticated one which circles in and around the home. So we then now have to think a little more about personal protection. So bushing off overgrown area, lots that have been left unoccupied and is becoming a forest place, those now pose a threat for the vector which is transmitting some of the most deadly illnesses.
But are the chemicals used in vector control effective?
Yes, it is effective. However, the malathion or the spraying that you call it fogging only get rid of the adult mosquito. Hence, if our larvicidal control activity is not in tip-top shape, we will realize that in short order, we will see adult mosquito again.
Mr. Morris also noted that climate change is a major factor in dealing with the mosquito population.
Having temperature variation that will cause mosquito larvae to come into production much faster than what we're used to. So we must admit that climate change, temperature has an impact on proliferation. As such, mosquito control is an integrated approach, not just fogging.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
And the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention CDC says so far this year, 2.7 million cases of dengue have been reported in the Americas. 2 million were recorded in Brazil and more than 100,000 in Mexico, Nicaragua, and Colombia. The CDC's dengue branch in Puerto Rico says there has been a massive resurgence in dengue fever in several countries around the globe. The cases have been the highest since 2010. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says he's seeking to strengthen Jamaica's relationship with China. Mr. Holness, who is currently in the Asian country for an official visit, says he also wants to see an increase in investments from China.
And just to be clear and to be on the record, we can't give fiscal incentives anymore. In other words, we can't buy investments because that's what fiscal incentives amount to. You know, giving tax breaks and reduce cost on duties and so forth. We can't do that because what that is doing is reducing our revenue and thereby impacting on our debt potentially. So what we have to do is make it easier for people to do business in Jamaica so that they will choose Jamaica.
Chinese investors have been spending heavily in Jamaica, especially on infrastructure projects. And it's time for a break, but stay with us. More stories right after these messages. Welcome back, and we're continuing the news. A woman is claiming negligence following the death of her daughter at the Port Antonio hospital. The deceased woman was pregnant.
And when he go to hospital, he see him a ball fin head. And them carry man cut him. And after him a ball fin head, then do he get fixed 3 times the boyfriend said. And then the doctor say him have to cut him.
In response, the hospital says a report is being compiled on the matter. It will, among other things, outline the events leading to the woman's death. One man is dead and another is on the run following Sunday's shooting incident in a section of Highgate, St. Mary. The dead man has been identified as 37-year-old Jason McLeod. According to reports, Mr. McLeod was sitting on a wall in the community when a man approached him with a gun, pointed it in his direction, and opened fire. Mr. McLeod ran into a neighbor's house. His mother told TVJ News she was at church when she heard explosions.
I call him phone, I get him, I call never phone. I don't get him and I turn down the road. When I turn down the road, I say never. He say, plumber get shot. I say, we're in the panic veranda. So I go up there and I say, plumber. And he said, he answered me.
He was later taken to hospital where he died.
He's a good person. You just go to school, but we don't do him that much. But you know, Him don't do me anything nor nothing, so me can't say anything bad about him.
How you feel about the incident?
A 63-year-old woman has been murdered in Clarendon. She is Edna Winter of Havana Heights Phase 3. Reports are that shortly after 12 Monday afternoon, Ms. Winter was at her regular spot on Fogar Road where she and her daughter operate a stall when explosions were heard. Ms. Winter's daughter told TVJ News that she was not with her at the time of the incident. However, her one-year-old son was left with her mother. Ms. Winter's body was found with gunshot wounds, but the baby was not hurt.
So she over here and she said she feels sick. So I say alright, cause she show me that she have one pain in her ribs there. So I say alright, stay till me got hospital and come back. Me I'll carry her over hospital 12 o'clock to every 3 o'clock shift over hospital. And me tell her, say, sit down here, so. Peel over here, go take one and set her mal on the back of her fridge and sit down till me come and me not come back and see my mother. Me left her right just so with the baby there, so.
The parish of St. Anne has recorded a marginal increase in murders this year compared to 2018. Addressing a recent stakeholders meeting in the parish, head of the St. Anne Police, Senior Superintendent Calvin Small, noted there were 2 more murders than the 35 committed last year. As for other crimes,
shootings are down by 2, 36 last year, 34 this year. Robberies are up, 64 this year, 47 last year. Break-ins are down, 80 last year versus 71 this year. Rapes and other sexual offenses are down significantly. We are seeing only 4 recorded versus 21 last year. And larceny, we are seeing 6 versus, 5 this year versus 6 last year.
SSP Small says out of the 235 major crimes in the parish, Ocherias accounts for 94 of those crimes, followed by St. Anne's Bay and Brownstown. He also outlined communities for special attention.
There is Steertown, where now we have increased our presence in that space because of some shootings and a murder occurred there recently. We have places like Parrytown, where we have to pay special attention to that area due to instances of murders and shootings that we have had in that space.
Meanwhile, SSP Small is also concerned about the number of fatalities due to road crashes in St. Anne. He noted that since the start of the year, there has been 30 road crashes leading to 33 deaths from the roadway leading from Miami Bay to Discovery Bay.
The main issue is speeding, careless driving, careless, overtaking without due care. But it is not an easy task sometimes to catch some of these drivers when they are driving recklessly.
And in sports, defending champions Kingston College and Wolmer's will vie for sole leadership in their group today at the Stadium East in the quarter-final round of the Issa Manning Cup. Both teams are tied on 3 points after recording victories in their opening game. However, a win for either teams would send them top of the group and a point away from the semi-finals. Kickoff is at 4 p.m. Meanwhile, Camperdown and Charlie Smith look to stay in contention for a spot in the last 4 when they do battle in the opening game at 2 p.m. Both saw defeats to KC and Wolmer's, and a win for either would keep them alive in the race for the top 2 semi-final spots. TVJ and TVJ Sports Network will have live coverage. And that's the Midday News. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.